Good morning. My name is Joe Griffiths, Director of Planning Best Practices for the Maryland Department of Planning. Welcome to the next webinar in the Maryland Department of Transportation's MDOT in Motion webinar series, Micromobility, the New Vehicles on the Block. Today's webinar is presented in celebration of Bike Month. MDP is joined by our colleagues at MDOT and an expert panel that share examples and resources that facilitate micromobility. Next slide, please. Today's webinar is eligible for 1.5 AICP credits. The CM number is on the screen. You can log your credits on your AICP credit maintenance dashboard on the American Planning Association website. We will also send you a completion certificate. You will receive it from the email certs@gutenbergcerts.com. Following Maryland's state policy, third-party AI assistants are prohibited and have been blocked from this webinar. Audio echo also often occurs when you have two Zoom windows open. If you're experiencing audio echo, try closing one to remove it. Attendees have been muted, but you can ask questions in the Q&A. We will reserve most questions for the end, but panelists will also try to answer some in the Q&A panel. Please use the Q&A function and not the chat function to ask your questions. The chat should be reserved for sharing resources with one another and enriching the learning environment. Questions put in the chat will likely go to the top of the queue as other people chat and will be lost later. Attendees can enable closed captioning in the toolbar. This session will be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please leave before the recording begins. The recording will be made available within 2 weeks on the OATM newsletter and event archive website. Next slide, please. On April 8th, 2025, Governor Moore signed Maryland's new Sustainable Growth Planning Principles into law, which replaced the previous 12 visions. To aid state and local application of the new planning principles, last December, the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet published the Sustainable Growth Implementation Guide, which describes each principle, the benefits of incorporating the principles into local and state planning, key performance indicators Maryland will use to measure progress, case examples of the principles in action around the state, and resources for principles implementation. The implementation guide is organized by principle and is designed to emphasize Maryland's land use and development priorities while also allowing flexible application by various types of users. Next slide, please. Today's webinar will focus on the principles of transportation and equity, even though micromobility supports implementation of all the principles. The intent statements for each principle are shown on the screen. Both promote and are aided by micromobility. I will now turn it over to my MDOT partner, Darren Lovas.
Hello, thanks so much, Joe. I'm Darren Lovas, and I'm the Chief of Environment and Sustainable Transportation here in the Secretary's Office at MDOT, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. And it's a pleasure to partner with the Maryland Department of Planning as a sustainable growth partner. And our work, when we collaborate effectively at our best, aims at working towards all 8 principles. I'd like you to keep 2 in mind, and they're actually highlighted here on the slide. First of all, the transportation principle, which emphasizes multimodal transportation networks. We're looking to build an energy efficient, affordable, safe, and reliable network that integrates various modes of transportation, and this is an obvious fit with today's topic of micromobility. And then, as you can see with the equity principle, we want to engage all sectors of the community to ensure diverse voices are heard and the needs of underserved populations are prioritized. So this means equitable access and safe use of public infrastructure. So the other thing I'll mention is the place principle, which emphasizes creating places or communities that encourage social interaction and value cultural, historical, and natural resources. These unique places tend to be compact, mixed use, and walkable, with complete streets integral to their formation. Complete streets also support the achievement of the other planning principles, of course, all 8 of them, such as land, equity, ecology, as complete streets help to prioritize growth in population centers, which helps with land, provide affordable and accessible transportation modes, such as walking, biking, and transit, which are essential for underserved communities. That's equity. And then foster walking, biking, and taking transit to help reduce vehicle miles of travel and greenhouse gas emissions, which has to do with ecology. All right, next slide. Today's webinar is part of our MDOT in Motion series where we bring information about multimodal projects to you. Multimodal projects get more Marylanders moving, connecting people to opportunities and to each other. The purpose of our webinars, as well as our newsletters, and any future efforts, is to share information about how more choices can mean lower transportation costs for individuals and families, while also reducing congestion and supporting a healthier, more connected state. If you have feedback about the webinars or our work, or want to suggest a topic, please fill out the survey link to the QR code on your screen right now. And we can go ahead and flip to the next slide. All right, so for today's webinar, we have a pretty simple agenda with stars presenting on each of these topics. First, talking about how we roll will be Meg Young, right here at MDOT. And then how we e-bike smart. We'll hear from Allison Dewey of the League of American Bicyclists. And then rolling all out in terms of enforcement and education, we'll hear from Sergeant Nathan Coots of Ocean City. And then we'll have a Q&A session after that. Next slide, sorry. All right, this is the great lineup. I just talked to you about them. So I'm gonna go ahead and without further ado, introduce our first presenter. So you can flip to the next slide. All right. Meg Young is an urban planner with more than 10 years experience working to make it safer for people to walk, bike, ride transit, and to share the road. Prior to MDOT, she worked at the Federal Transit Administration and the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. During her career, she has worked on micromobility projects in New Orleans, Baltimore, and even Rwanda. She's a certified bicycle instructor through the American League of Cyclists and enjoys teaching people of all ages how to move on two wheels. And I'm delighted to hand it over to my colleague, Meg.
Thanks so much, Darren. Welcome, everybody. As Darren said, my name is Meg Young. I'm our Deputy Director for Active Transportation and Micromobility, which is in the name of our office here at the Maryland Department of Transportation since we adopted our 2024 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. We've had our eyes set on micromobility. So first and foremost, I want to say happy Bike Month to everyone. Bike Month is celebrated nationally, but this is our second webinar of the month where we're focused on bike-related topics. Our Governor Wes Moore, proclaimed May 2026 as Bike Month. On the screen, you'll see a picture of the proclamation he signed, but we know biking and rolling can lead to health and quality of life outcomes. They have a tourism and economic impact for our communities, and they have environmental benefits. So we've been celebrating all month long. We had over 30 schools participate in Bike and Roll to School Day, and we also celebrated Bike to Work Week just last week. It was great to visit the pit stops and celebrations across Maryland. If you have not yet celebrated, it's not too late. I'm still joining another bike bus next week, and there's probably one near you. So a few pictures from the month really quickly. On the left is Bike and Roll to School Day at Bellow Springs Elementary in Howard County, Maryland. On the right, we had a press conference with the Baltimore City Mayor announcing a commitment to 17 miles of new separated or hardened facilities in Baltimore. He's pictured there with the Baltimore City Department of Transportation Director, as well as our MTA Administrator, Holly Arnold, and our MDOT Secretary, Katie Thompson. We really had a variety of events. We also tabled at a number of events and pit stops for Bike to Work Week. On the left is Bike to Work Week in Silver Spring, where we had our Assistant Secretary and our Director of Active Transportation there. And then we also got out and did some biking ourselves. On the right, you'll see our Bike to Work Week celebration for our employees. We had commuter tables sharing information about how to commute. You'll see me, and you'll also see Darren, who showed us you can bike with a suit and tie. We had somebody also do it in heels. So you can bike to work however you're coming to work. But the real reason we are focused on biking for Bike Month is part of our overall strategy for implementing complete streets and being serious about safety in Maryland. This year, we released our capital budget with the largest investment on record for active transportation. And really, this last bullet, I think, is the most important, that these are programs focused on vulnerable roadway users. These are projects focused on safety. And for bike safety and micromobility safety, we'll look at crash data, and I'll have more graphs of crash data broken down for micromobility users as well. But people walking and biking remain vulnerable roadway users and are identified in our strategic highway safety plan because they are overrepresented in fatal and serious injury crashes. We were very excited to announce that in 2025, we saw a precipitous drop in crashes in Maryland. And while nationwide it was reported that there was about a 6% reduction in crashes, in Maryland that was about 16%. So we're happy that our strategies for a safe system approach seem to be working, and those reductions for people walking and biking were actually a 33% reduction. But we still have to remain focused on this because we know that people walking and biking are vulnerable roadway users, because if struck, they are more likely to have a severe injury or fatality. So on the bottom of the screen here is a statistic I've seen presented a couple different ways, but showing that when speed increases, the likelihood that somebody struck while walking or biking experiences a severe injury or fatality goes up exponentially. At 20 miles per hour, there's only a 10% chance of having a severe injury or fatality, but by the time you get up to 40 miles per hour, you multiply that by 8, there's an 80% chance of a fatality or a severe injury. So we want to do more to reduce these types of crashes. And so at the Maryland Department of Transportation, our work related to walking, biking, and rolling and micromobility is led by our master plans. In 2024, we released the 2050 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan with a vision that Maryland will provide a safe and convenient active transportation network that supports equitable access for all. And on the screen is a screenshot of the cover of this plan. But this also included for the first time a new focus for MDOT, which is micromobility. And it led to the creation of our office, the Office of Active Transportation and Micromobility. Generally, what we're talking about here is a term for small, low-speed vehicles that are often powered by humans, but are often also electric, and have really been seeing an exponential growth in these. Our 2050 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan included a number of recommendations to create operational guidance for counties and towns that have shared micromobility fleets, to develop rules of the road and safety guidance for micromobility vehicles, and to develop parking and design guidelines to increase safety and use of micromobility at transit hubs. And so as we go through this, there's really two types of micromobility, or there's two buckets that I put them in for thinking about how to approach these recommendations and increasing safety. First, on the left, we have shared micromobility, and this is what we saw proliferate across cities in Maryland and across the nation first. It started out with things like bike shares. Here in Maryland and our neighbors in DC, we had one of the first bike share systems in the nation, launched in 2008, Capital Bike Share that you see pictured here, which now also has electric bicycles in addition to traditional pedal bicycles. Then around 2018, we also saw a number of e-bikes and e-scooters that were launched in cities under what's called a dockless vehicle model. But they're all shared vehicles that are parts of fleets that can be rented from the public right-of-way. And this was really a large focus of our 2050 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, because this was what we were seeing the most of at the time when we were working on this plan back in 2022 and 2023. But since then, we've seen a huge growth in personally owned micromobility vehicles as well. And so when we're talking about safety and the context, this is what we're still trying to get more and more information about, is these personally owned micromobility vehicles and how to reach the people who are riding them. So you'll see on the screen the different types of vehicles. This is a small sampling. There are so many different types of vehicles coming down our roadways, from personally owned e-scooters. This one is called a one-wheel. And then, of course, electric bikes, where this one, frankly, looks kind of like a normal bike. You can't even tell it's necessarily an electric bike. And then we've also seen across the nation and in Baltimore City here in Maryland, e-bike voucher programs and e-bike rebate programs, because I think there's a lot of recognition that these vehicles can provide access and are a great alternative to owning a personal motor vehicle. So in approaching shared fleets and personally owned vehicles, one thing that's important for us to understand at MDOT is what our role is and where we fit in. So first of all, as the State Department of Transportation, we are the ones who worked to define the vehicles and the rules of the road, which are now all codified in the Maryland state laws. We also set standards for inclusive roadway designs and parking on state roads and transit facilities. And then we can share information with local jurisdictions about best practices for shared fleets, as well as education, vehicle maintenance, and riding safely. But to approach these shared fleets and personally owned vehicles, MDOT cannot do this alone. We have a number of additional partners. So for shared fleets, those are mostly governed by local governments who permit them to do business on the right-of-way. Local governments are also the ones who set standards for roadway design and parking on local roads and at local facilities. And then as far as disseminating information about vehicles and safety, this is an all hands on deck situation. And I think you'll hear throughout the webinar today the kind of call for those of us who know more about micromobility to help educate everyone around us and help make sure people know what safe vehicles are and how to ride them safely. So we lay all this out on our new micromobility webpage, which is mdot.maryland.gov/micromobility. So back to the trends and what we're seeing in Maryland now in 2026. So I mentioned first the shared micromobility programs, the bike and scooter shares. And to date in Maryland, we've had 10 jurisdictions that have had shared programs. And this ranges from small cities, like the city of Aberdeen has a small program that was focused out of their MARC station, and people could rent e-scooters and go where they want to go, all the way up to our counties like Montgomery County and Prince George's County that are part of Capital Bike Share, or Baltimore City that has a robust dockless vehicle program. And what we've seen from these programs, the 10 jurisdictions across the state, is, first of all, record ridership in 2025. And the early statistics for 2026 are showing even more increase. And this is for a number of reasons. With gas prices on the rise, a lot of people are wondering, how can they reduce car trips? We've also seen these programs be very intentional with how they deploy vehicles and how they grant access to everyone. So the data in particular shows an increase in ridership in underserved areas and high utilization of low-income equity access plans. So on the right of your screen, there's a screenshot of some data from the Baltimore City dockless vehicle program. So this dockless ride data is publicly available through the permit that the companies have to operate on the right-of-way. They're required to provide what's called an MDS API. So there's a mobility data specification that dictates what sort of information these companies are required to report. And what you see right now is a map of ridership in 2019 on this program. Purple is where there's the most ridership. And in Baltimore, you can see it kind of makes an L in 2019. And that is where the predominantly wealthy neighborhoods are in Baltimore. It's what some refer to as the white L of Baltimore, but is where there's the highest property values. And a lot of other quality of life statistics tend to just be a lot higher. I'm going to click, and this is going to change. This is the ridership in 2025, the last year that we have a full year of data for. What you'll notice is that L has disappeared. And this is a representative of over 3 million trips recorded on these devices. This was not by chance. This is because through a permitted and shared program, they have put in requirements of placing vehicles in neighborhoods where people do not own personal motor vehicles. They have also required a standard access plan for qualifying residents. And these users of those plans statistically all take more trips than the average user. So through these programs, we're seeing a lot of increase of equity of access and people really taking these vehicles to get where they need to go. While there have been, issues along the way, we're really happy to see this result. And if you want to know more about the shared mobility programs in Maryland, I encourage you to check out our webinar from last July, where we had a focus on the Baltimore program as well as the University of Maryland DACLIS program. So these vehicles, again, in a shared fleet, we know a lot about them. We can see everywhere they go, and we know that they are legal micromobility vehicles that go through inspections at a certain frequency. But the second group of vehicles are the private vehicles that we don't know as much about and are going to be more of the focus of today's webinar. Because what we do know is that there's been a tremendous growth in ownership. We've seen high adoption rates from young people, but also older adults who maybe used to bike, but now that long trip is a lot more feasible on an e-bike. And we're also seeing delivery workers using these vehicles to make their living and make their deliveries. But we still are missing a little bit of context here. We don't know the full ownership levels, and we don't have ridership data to the extent that we do for shared vehicles. So what we will present today is a little bit of what we know and what we still are trying to uncover to make sure that people can take advantage of micromobility as a huge tool for access, but do so safely, and to make sure that we can target our safety strategy around where it's most needed. And what that means is we're really starting at square one, at defining micromobility. And I've said it, and I've been using the terms kind of interchangeably for micromobility, e-bikes, and e-scooters. But it's not that clear. Micromobility are low-speed vehicles, often powered by humans, but then we have this subset of e-micromobility, which are electric-powered devices like electric bicycles and electric scooters. The vehicle code in Maryland is, set in our transportation article, and it lists all of the vehicles that you see on your screen in these little squares, things from bicycles to EPAMD, electric personal assisted mobility devices. We also have mini bikes and dirt bikes. Really, even for law enforcement, you'll hear it later, it's a little bit difficult to understand. So as these new vehicles are emerging and the vehicle codes and the rules of the road are a little bit difficult, the main thing that we're grappling with is making sure people know what is road legal and what is not. Class 1 to 3 e-bikes actually don't go much faster than a competitive cyclist, or like myself if I'm running late for the train in the morning. So these e-bikes are required to have a class sticker and a battery certification like what you see on the screen. This UL certification on the battery ensures that it's a safe battery up to standards. And the class 1 to 3 certification sticker means that it meets all of the requirements to be a road legal e-bike. So these can be pedaled whether or not the e-assist is on or not. They only go from 20 to 28 miles per hour for class 3. And their motor is not that powerful. It's like 1 horsepower. 750 watts is only 1 horsepower. So if you're riding one of these legal e-bikes, you follow all of the rules of the road that a regular bike would follow. You're not required to have a driver's license or a license plate, and you can ride in bicycle facilities. However, some of the things we're seeing sold are more like e-motorcycles or e-motos. So these are also powered by electric motor. They might have pedals on them, but the issues are when they're going faster than 28 miles per hour. As I showed on the screen, when the speed goes up, crashes are going to be more severe. So there's a reason why e-bikes are limited in their speed. They also are only supposed to have a engine of 750 watts or a motor of 750 watts. So if an owner tampers with or removes their speed governor, it's likely not going to be legal on Maryland roadways. So our call to action is that transportation professionals who know about vehicle types are the ones that reach out to our partners, local jurisdictions, law enforcement, first responders, and increasingly schools and parents. So what we're working on right now is with our Motor Vehicle Administration and our Highway Safety Office to develop and distribute educational materials. The Maryland Highway Safety Office is our lead for behavioral change and are the ones who use NHTSA funding. So a real quick pop quiz. One of these is road legal and one of them's not. And it's not as simple as you think. While the one on the left looks more like a motorcycle, it is a Class 2 e-bike, and the restrictions were noted on the online platform. The one on the right, which has a cute grocery basket and a kid, has a motor that's 2.5 times more powerful than what is road legal. Both of them being sold online had safety advertising. They both said this is a safe vehicle. But the one on the left is a Class 2 e-bike. It's allowed on most Maryland roadways and just prohibited on trails. The one on the right is an e-moto. It's 2.5 times more powerful than what's allowed for an e-bike, so it would probably require a license and registration and insurance to operate on a Maryland roadway. And this is what consumers don't understand and the reason why we're making this big push. So one of our first things that we do have available online is our regulation overview. This is the back side of it because, as you can see, it's complicated and there are different transportation article code links throughout to explain the common types of micromobility. It also details where these can be ridden and a little bit about e-bike maintenance and battery safety. This was intended for distribution to our local partners and law enforcement and advocates. The other thing that we've been working on in Maryland is to take a deep dive into crash data. Starting on January 1st, 2024, our crash reports filed in the Maryland Acres system have additional non-motorist options. So we now have 2 full years of crash data specific to micromobility. And while the data is still imperfect, and we still are working with law enforcement to improve the crash coding, we are starting to analyze this data so we can be more targeted with our messaging. So we have a couple different types of crash data and a real purpose for why we are looking at this type of crash data. First of all, crash by vehicle type. And again, in 2025, we were very excited that crashes were down in Maryland and that the pedestrian and bicycle fatalities dropped by 33%. However, we still know that there is an increase in some types of micromobility crashes. It's good to see impaired crashes are not as high as some people thought they might be. We only have 8 micromobility crashes from impairment. And then we can break things down by electric or non-electric micromobility if we really want to dive deep into the issues. The most startling thing for me on this screen is this graph on the upper right, which shows non-motorist types and the percent change in crashes we're seeing. And the main type, which is going up in crashes, is electric micromobility. But we do think if we were to contextualize that, that is also in line with increased ridership, and ownership. We can break down crashes geographically by vehicle type as well, looking at all non-motorists, which includes people walking, and then we can look at micromobility as electric and non-electric. I'm short on time here, folks, so I'm sorry. I'm going to go through quite quickly over the next couple graphs. But what we're seeing in the percent change is increases largely in our most populated centers, as well as some outliers on our coastal eastern Maryland. And we'll hear from Ocean City Police Department today about what they're seeing on the ground. When we look at demographics, here on these bar graphs, the red lines are male and the yellow lines are female. Young men are very overrepresented in our crash data. And when we get to electric micromobility, it is even more stark. So this is going to inform our targeted messaging. Our risk factors and locations show a lot about how we can target this as well. We can dive into crash data, where crashes are happening. They're most likely to happen at an intersection. That's where there are conflicts. And they're most likely to happen during afternoon rush hour. And then for our engineers here at MDOT, we also looked at land use and our context zones. So our state is classified about whether it's rural, suburban, urban, or an urban core. And again, we looked at what's overrepresented, and it is for fatalities, overrepresentation in suburban settings and suburban town centers, largely in commercial areas. Again, likely conflicts at access points and intersections. So all of this is informing where we're going in 2026. We're working on a micromobility safety education campaign, frequently asked questions. We're going to share that crash data and give you more time to look at it than I just did. But we'll also have a number of safe riding educational materials and information for retailers about fire safety and maintenance as well. This is going to be a targeted approach. We'll have social media graphics as well as additional communications collateral, and the targeted distribution strategy definitely includes schools and these at-risk populations and working directly through retailers. We're fortunate here in Maryland that we have partners at the Department of Natural Resources and Department of Commerce who are joining us with this effort. On the screen is a screenshot of the Outdoor Recreation Business Directory, but we have a list of all of our bike retailers across the state already. So I'll leave you with this. We want to apply a safe systems approach, which is a data-driven approach to micromobility safety. Humans are people, we make mistakes, and so we have to approach this from a lot of different angles. We want safer vehicles, we want safer people, we want post-crash care and safe speeds if we're going to make a dent in safety, but still let people use these vehicles that, again, are a great tool for access and for reaching everywhere you need to go in your day-to-day life. So I apologize I went over, but thank you all, and I'll hand it back to Darren.
Oh, good. Thank you, Meg. So as you have doubtless gathered from the data and information rich presentation, this area is a passion of Meg's, and her commitment to and knowledge about it is impressive and infectious. And we're going to go ahead and flip now to Allison Dewey. So Allison, if you could come on camera, that'd be great. So welcome, and I'm going to briefly introduce you. Allison leads the league's Smart Cycling Program and the annual National Bike Summit. She was hired initially to create and launch the Bicycle Friendly Business Program and managed the Bicycle Friendly University Program for 2 years and helped establish the Bicycle Friendly State Program. Before 2008, she worked for Massachusetts-based Landry's Bicycles and served 3 years on the board of the Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition. Dewey has an MA in International Relations and Communications from Boston University and is a graduate of St. Olaf College. She spent 3 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, where her bicycle was her primary mode of transportation, and she enjoys riding with her family now and commutes to work by bike. So, Allison?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Darren. It's nice to be here with you. Thanks to Meg. Excellent presentation. I learned a lot. And thanks to Darren and Joe. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to so many people. It's amazing the draw that this webinar has across the country, across the world. Big thanks to MDOT for their vast reach. Before I begin, I want to give a big thank you to the Maryland DOT team for organizing the webinar and for all the work they do in making biking and walking an option for communities across the state of Maryland. Today I'll be talking mostly about e-bike safety today, some trends and how to find more information about how to own and ride an e-bike more safely. Okay, so next slide. Okay, great. Since you've heard a little bit about me, thanks Darren for that wonderful introduction. I want to talk to you a little bit about the League of American Bicyclists, the organization I represent. We are a national nonprofit organization working on building a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. We're a very old organization. We've been around since 1880, which many of you may recognize as pre-automobile. So League of American Wheelmen, as we were called then, was born out of this intense frustration that wheelmen or bicyclists were experiencing at the time of just rutted out roads due to wagon wheels. And the roads would become so treacherous to travel on by bike that this band of wheelmen, bicyclists, came together, had over 100,000 people sign a huge wheel. It was about 10 feet in diameter, and they rolled that wheel right onto the floor of Congress and demanded better roads. That was the birth of the Better Roads movement. Maybe some people are familiar with that, and the birth of the League of American Wheelmen. And that wheel, by just a side note, has been in the Smithsonian on display, it's pretty amazing to see. So next slide. Today, the League of American Bicyclists continues our presence on Capitol Hill. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to roll big wheels onto the floor of Congress anymore. But we are still voicing our concern, our demand for better rights of cyclists and more funding for communities to support and encourage bicycling being a safe option for everyone. Our mission is to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. And we do that at the national level that has a direct impact on communities across the country. Okay, next slide. Our work, we summarize it in basically 3 ways. We advocate and amplify the voices at all levels of investment. We educate and promote best practices and safe ridership. We support and showcase what's happening throughout the country at the state and local levels. So education and promote, kind of like what I'm doing today, is educating and promoting some of the best practices across the country. Next slide. We created Bike Month, which I'll echo Meg's celebration of a wonderful bike month so far. We're halfway through it. It's been great. Had here in Maryland, had some great weather for Bike to Work Week, and had a great bike and roll to school day. Last Friday was Bike to Work Day. So hopefully many of you got out and enjoyed a coffee or a bagel at a pit stop. So the League, we do a lot of graphics during Bike Month so that organizations, communities, individuals don't have to remake the wheel. So we have a nice suite of graphics to help those entities promote and support Bike Month. Next slide. The League of American Bicyclists has our Bicycle Friendly America program, which consists of an opt-in program for community, businesses, and universities. We also have our bicycle-friendly state program, which ranks states across the US on how bicycle-friendly they are. It comes out every other year. So 2026, we're going to see a new ranking. Congratulations to MDOT and MDOT efforts and efforts of communities and individuals across the state of Maryland, because Maryland came in at 9th. And that's high. Congratulations. On the Eastern Regional rank, we got number 3. I live in Maryland as well, so I love to think that some of my individual efforts were helping. Yeah, I think Meg or somebody, Darren, maybe put the link into as the full report card. You can see where Maryland stacks up based on our criteria in terms of education, evaluation and planning, encouragement efforts, engineering efforts, all of those things that we look at. And the 9th ranking is a testament to everyone's good work throughout Maryland. But let's try and get higher in 2026. All right. So now that you know a little bit about the league, I want to talk about electric bikes through the lens of the League of American Bicyclists robust cycling education program, which we call Smart Cycling. So next slide. The League of American Bicyclists, we've been offering cycling education since the 1970s. We've been training instructors, offering guidance, offering classes, producing curricula. All cycling education in the US, basically it traces its roots back to what the League of American Bicyclists is doing with cycling education. We have youth cycling education, we have a group riding curriculum, we have a learn to ride curriculum for adults and for youth. We have a curriculum for drivers, which was a new addition for us a few years ago in just promoting a little bit of, roadway empathy for cyclists and teaching drivers how to share the road responsibly with cyclists and what we teach cyclists to do how to ride on the roadways. Nearly all of our curricula are available in Spanish. And one of the newer additions to our library of learning is our e-bike smart videos, which help people learn about opportunities that e-bikes can offer, the variety of e-bikes available out there, and the responsibilities of e-bike ownership and ridership. So let's talk a little bit more about e-bikes. Next slide. I'm sure it's not a surprise to anyone that on this call about micromobility that the growth of e-bikes that the country has seen over the past few years has been pretty amazing, pretty steep, pretty quick. You can see here, this is the latest data we have on bike imports. Maybe everyone knows that almost like 95% of bikes are manufactured outside of the US. So when we look at imports, we can see what people are buying from retailers, what big bike box retailers are selling. And basically 1 out of every 5 bikes being sold in the US is an e-bike now, which years ago, that was pretty unheard of. E-bike was more of an anomaly as opposed to kind of bread and butter, but they're growing and people are seeing a lot more e-bikes out there. Now, next slide, please. Now, there are many different kinds of e-bikes and providing different types of uses. It's really good to be aware of the many opportunities they present, the different styles and the different builds of e-bikes when you decide to purchase an e-bike. Some are designed for carrying extra cargo. Some are designed for carrying extra people or kids. Some are designed just like conventional bikes, kind of to hide the e-assist a little bit. But they all come with just that little bit of extra boost in power. With all e-bikes, the rider enjoys a less fatiguing ride, which allows for farther and easier rides. There are two types of battery integrations. Internal, where the battery is located inside, typically the frame of the bike, where you have to, in order to charge it, you'll have to bring the whole charging system to the bike or the bike to the charging system. And an external battery, which are a little more common, I guess, where the rider can remove the battery and charge it in a different location. You can take off the battery to make the bike a little bit lighter if you're transporting it, and a little bit of safety or security for if you're leaving your bike. If you take the battery with you, it's going to be a little bit harder for someone to take the bike without the battery. Okay, next slide. So regardless of what the e-bike looks like, they all fit into the same federal definition and CPSC, which is the Consumer Product Safety Commission regulations. Meg talked a little bit about this, and these are a few important slides because this is becoming more of an issue of what is an e-bike and what isn't an e-bike in the transportation landscape that we're now in. So according to federal law and CPSC, a low-speed electric bicycle is a 2- or 3-wheeled vehicle with fully operable pedals. So the pedals have to move, and when they move, they're moving the bike. An electric motor of less than 750 watts, again, 1 horsepower, as Meg pointed out, and whose maximum speed on paved level surface, when powered solely by such a motor, while ridden by an operator who weighs 170 pounds, is less than 20 miles per hour. So that's a lot to understand. Next slide. And basically the 3 things you want to focus on are fully operable pedals. So the pedals are moving when pressed upon in a circular fashion, and they are moving the bike. They're not just there to rest your feet. They're actually operating the bike by pedaling. 750 watts, that's key because every motor is going to have their wattage associated with it. And then that it's less than 20 miles per hour if ridden without pedaling, and so through a throttle. So these important characteristics. Okay, next slide. So what the bike industry has kind of organized around, and also what most states have adopted now, is a 3-class system of bikes, because within that definition that we just discussed, there's some variations within that definition. So while CPSC regulates the manufacturing of e-bikes, states and local governments regulate where and how these e-bikes can be ridden. So these 3 classes help states and local governments kind of differentiate a little bit of access. So class 1, an e-bike where electric assistance is activated by pedaling or by throttle and cuts out by 20 miles per hour. This is or the meaning electric assist is only activated when the rider is pedaling. I think I might have said class 2. So the pedal assist bike only operates when the rider is pedaling. And you can look at most city sponsored or city available bike fleets, like bike share systems, are class 1 if they are offering an electric assist bike. Class 2 is an e-bike where the electric assistance is activated by pedaling or by a throttle and then cuts out at 20. miles per hour. And then a class 3 has assistance only when pedaling, and it cuts out at 28 miles per hour. Class 3 is more likely to face restrictions with local governments because of the speed. And here in Maryland, a rider of a class 3 e-bike you'll see also a lot of cities and states doing age requirements. So in Maryland, you must be 16 years or older to ride a class 3 e-bike. Okay, so the next trend that we're seeing in the next slide is this boom of small electric vehicles that exist outside of this definition. And that's where we're getting, there's a lot of confusion of what is an e-bike as federally defined, and what is not an e-bike. So these electric vehicles are not e-bikes. They shouldn't be treated as e-bikes. Instead, they should be considered e-motos. The bike industry and a lot of advocates have kind of, what do we call these? We were calling them out of class e-bikes for a while, but then people were hearing the e-bikes associated with out of class and didn't know what it meant. Some people called them toy motorcycles. That's also a good name. But what we've kind of decided on is that we're calling these e-motos. And next slide. So these are not e-bikes. Oh, go back. Just big X's. They're not e-bikes. When we're talking about allowing e-bikes on trails and access for e-bikes, these bikes is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a class 1, a class 2, class 3 e-bike that is truly, as federally defined, an e-bike. Okay, now we can go on to the next slide. So that's just an important thing to note. And I think I saw a chat where someone was like, even the media is getting it wrong. It's true. Even I've read so many articles, seen so many news broadcasts where they are interchanging e-bikes and e-motos, or just calling something an e-bike when it really is capable of going, the vehicle that they're talking about is capable of going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. That is not what we're calling an e-bike. So whatever bike you decide to ride, the league has education for you. We strongly encourage that an e-bike not be your first bike. We encourage you to, or your loved one, if you're riding the bike or buying a bike for a child, that you hone your skills on a non-electric bike, a conventional bike. Like, let's get some good bike handling practice in before you jump into an e-bike. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. When you're ready to buy an e-bike, we recommend that you first learn a little more about what you're looking for in acquiring an e-bike, because we discussed there's so many different types of e-bikes out there. We recommend you learn about battery safety and just general safety on e-bikes, and how to ride them on a trail etiquette, and basic e-bike safety, collision awareness. Meg was talking about some, where they see the most crashes occur are intersections. Yeah, we see that too. So we talk about lane positioning, approaching an intersection, how to respond where you're going through, how you're proceeding through that intersection. And we present this basic bike safety information all on our learning center. It's called learn.bikeleague.org. It's always available. Next slide. There's videos, training videos, there's quizzes. You can earn a certificate of completion. It's always available and always free. So the next step, the next slide, to improve your riding safety is to actually get on an e-bike with an instructor or with a class that has an instructor. We have thousands of league cycling instructors across the country. These LCIs, as we call them, are certified through a 3-day certification seminar. They can teach our curriculum. They are covered under our insurance, and they can really help you understand and practice bike handling skills, understanding lane positioning, understanding avoidance maneuvers, all on a regular bike or an e-bike. You can find a class, next slide, and locate a league cycling instructor in your area on our website, bikeleague.org.map. And then also a lot of Maryland organizations such as, next slide, please, such as Bike Maryland, WABA, Bike More, Bike AAA, are great partners across the great state of Maryland, also offer classes as well. So check them out and help support those great organizations. And that's it from me. I really appreciate the time and I look forward to questions at the end. Thanks.
Super. Thanks so much, Allison. Again, more information and clarifying that we're at the cutting edge here in terms of this growing field and growing market for e-bikes. So thank you. All right, so we're going to flip now to Sergeant Kutz. I hope I got that right.
Yes.
Okay. And he joined the Ocean City Police Department as a seasonal officer in 2009 and was hired full-time in 2012. He joined this traffic safety unit the same year and became a certified crash reconstructionist. Since then, he's expanded his traffic safety knowledge to crash investigations and to be the department's lead for bicycle, pedestrian, and micromobility safety. Currently, he serves as president of the Ocean City Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and assistant coordinator of the Ocean City Police Department's Traffic Safety Unit. Sergeant Kutz organizes the agency's traffic safety operations to encourage officers to conduct bicycle, scooter, and pedestrian enforcement and education. Sergeant?
Well, good afternoon. Thanks, Darren. For those of you at least in the Eastern time zone, thanks for having me. Allison, wonderful presentation. Meg, MDOT, Joe, thanks everybody for having me participate today. So here we are rolling it out, education through enforcement. Just like many of you in this chat, we are muddling through this micro-mobility business. And it's difficult, and it's conversations like this that are really helping us guide us into the future. Next slide. So presentation today, I'm going to describe Ocean City's environment, tell you about Ocean City, Maryland. I'll explain the 4 E's of highway safety, demonstrate some of the connection between enforcement and educators. I'll illustrate for you what I call the law lag, how the law is kind of lagging behind these devices, and describe the benefits of micromobility, some conflicts, define our local efforts to increase highway safety, and then ask where to next. Next slide. So in this photo, you'll see an aerial picture of Ocean City. This is looking north towards Delaware is in the background, our northern neighbor. But Ocean City, Maryland is Maryland's only coastal resort. It's about a 10-mile barrier island on the east coast of Maryland. And it is a huge tourist destination. We've got a beautiful boardwalk. Our winter population, only about 7,000 residents. But in the summer, gearing up right now, we get up to 300,000 people, maybe 500,000 on a really busy weekend. So we see a huge influx in the summer. We host special events, car shows, and concerts, and we're reliant on a unique J1 visitor program, a summer workforce program, and that presents some challenges. But we're talking about MDOT here, and the T stands for transportation. So we're going to focus on this major 8-lane highway that just dominates our landscape. Next slide. Here's an aerial photo of Coastal Highway, or Maryland 528. It runs from Delaware all the way down to the inlet, so the full length of Ocean City. And it's an 8-lane major thoroughfare. It's an artery in Ocean City that transports people north and south. It's got 4 lanes in each direction. There's sidewalks to center median, and it's lighted. And there's a designated shared lane for right turns, buses, and micromobility users that goes in each direction there. Looking north, it'd be on your right, and then coming south, it would be on your left. Next slide. So remember the title of this presentation, Education Through Enforcement. Two of those keywords are part of this next discussion. We start the discussion on micromobility here, at least from a law enforcement perspective. We talk about the 4 E's of highway or traffic safety, and those are EMS, engineering, education, and enforcement. When it comes to EMS, I'm talking about high quality care, timely care to crashes, getting people care, getting them to hospitals. Engineering, well, that's the job of our public works departments to increase highway design to make highways safer. But the title of this presentation is Education and Enforcement. So that's where we're going to focus. Law enforcement are educators. We are the professors of the highway. And so we do education through enforcement, and I'll talk about that here next. Pictured here is a child on an iPad in a classroom setting, and this is a quote, "An educated highway user is a safe highway user." So through education, we get safety. Next slide. All right, so what are we talking about here as law enforcement as educators or professors or teachers? Well, obviously law enforcement does enforcement, right? So on the left side of your screen, the police and law enforcement enforce pre-established laws and regulations. They make arrests, they issue tickets and warnings, among many other tasks. But on the right side of your screen, we've got education. So how do we do that? Well, we engage the public through community policing efforts. In Ocean City, we do a Lights on Bikes events. We do National Night Out. We do press conferences, welcome events for our J1 student workers, and Read Across America. Those are just a few examples. We encourage safe driving habits by explaining the law. We have the unique opportunity to stop people who are violating the law and explain the law. It's that explanation that is a teaching moment. And then we set expectations by issuance of a citation or warning. This is a homework assignment. Think of the last time, or if you ever stopped by the police, did you learn something? That's the goal, is to educate through this enforcement. Next slide. I recently sat in the back of a DUI trial, and it was a user of an e-bike who was charged with driving impaired. And pictured here, 2 bicyclists on a track. But in this trial, the judge said those e-bikes go pretty fast, somewhere between a car and a regular bike. So this quote by a judge just demonstrates that even the judge was a bit confused at what exactly an e-bike was, somewhere between a car and a traditional bike. Next slide. So when it comes to state and local laws, those laws are created by legislators or municipal, county, or local officials, right? The police then have the unique opportunity to enforce the laws that are on the books. And then the courts, shown here with a judge's gavel, are the ones responsible for finding guilt or innocence. This describes the 3 branches of government: legislative, judicial, and executive. The police or law enforcement are part of the executive branch. So with the invention and the steady perfection, I'd say, of the lithium-ion battery in particular, we as law enforcement are seeing an exponential increase in these micromobility devices, how people scoot, move, walk, pedal, whatever that may be on our highway. And that presents a unique challenge for us in defining what these things are in order to apply the law. Next slide. In order to demonstrate just how difficult it is sometimes to muddle our way through this, I wanted to show you a screenshot of Microsoft Text's own program here. This is a text program, and the little red squiggly, text spell check, doesn't even understand the word micromobility. I would say that technology here is outpacing technology, and spell check hasn't even caught up yet to this very word. Microsoft Word, interestingly, has caught up, and it won't give you the spell check error. Next slide. So, disclaimer here, this chart is not meant to be viewed. The point of this chart in front of you, which shows several rows and several columns of devices is to prove just how difficult it is to put all of these devices into a category. The purpose of this chart, which was created, there's 21 columns here of different devices. It was to educate our officers. We found that our police officers were having a difficult time applying the law to what they're seeing out on the highway. And if we go to the next slide, I've got a zoomed in portion of the top left of that chart. This should be easier to see. The columns here are bicycle, moped, e-bike generally, and then we have, like Allison was describing, class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes, and then scooters. If we moved off to the right, we'd have all those other devices. And then going down the rows, how is the device powered? And what are the characteristics? What is it defined as? What is it, a vehicle? Is it a motor vehicle? Is it titled, registered? Is there a driver's license? So this chart is used as an educational tactic, not just for the public, but for us as law enforcement. Moving on. So Ocean City's environment is a really great place to bike, scoot, move, or whatever you're doing on your device. That J1 visa workforce I talked about, these J1 workers are coming from other countries around the world, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Italy, and they are coming to Ocean City to work on a J1 visa. So these are people from other countries that don't understand our laws, and that creates some challenges for us. And those J1 workers are commuting to and from work, just like our locals who are going to the service industries, going to the restaurants and all the attractions in Ocean City. They're using that shared use lane to get up and down the highway. When you come to Ocean City, you're probably a tourist, so leisure and exercise are important. And then pictured here are 2 police officers from our agency, and they are on bike patrol. Interestingly, our fire department and EMS also has a bike patrol. Next slide. So why be so concerned? Well, crash data in Ocean City locally from the last 3 years is alarming. There is an upward trend in crashes involving micromobility devices. Pictured a child wearing a helmet on a bicycle. If we go to the next slide, you'll see just how much these crashes are increasing. In Ocean City in 2023, 11 scooter crashes. This includes e-scooters. So your pedal scooter, the one you move with your foot, or your e-scooter, there were 11. It almost tripled in 2024 with 31. And then in 2025, 49 scooter crashes. Dare I ask, if we do nothing, where will we be in 5 years on this chart? Next slide. And the same chart here in a different format showing green is 2025, orange in the middle there is 2024, and the blue line at the bottom is 2023. So we are seeing a lot of crashes in our summer months. No surprise there. That's when our population swells. Moving on to the next slide. I'll talk about some of the conflicts and safety issues. This is a photograph of that shared use lane. You're looking north at 33rd Street, 2 bicyclists riding south. That bike lane right there is for buses, right turns only, and bicycles. So this bike lane here is something we need to be concerned about, this shared use lane. We've got our biggest vehicles, our city buses, sharing a lane with our smallest micromobility users. So that presents some challenges for us when it comes to enforcement. 3 of the biggest things we're seeing when it comes to enforcement are riders of these devices going the wrong way up that lane, riders going through red lights, and riding on our sidewalks where that's prohibited. Moving on. So I'm going to focus a little bit of time here on this, our local safety efforts. And if you look at the top left here, the 2025 vehicle chart is what I described earlier. That's that chart of 21 columns of devices and how they apply to the law in Ocean City. It's specific to Ocean City because we have a boardwalk, and that boardwalk is used to transport people up and down. It's about 3 miles from our inlet up to about 27th Street. So people can use that boardwalk to move up and down, but there are some restrictions. We've got a traffic safety specialist program in Maryland, and our officers increase their training and knowledge to get this designation as a TSS specialist, as a specialist 1, 2, or 3. I'm currently working on number 3 by doing a study on scooters in Ocean City. engineering improvements. So as law enforcement, we're not the ones building the highways, but we're certainly referring issues we see. We work with our public works departments and MDOT to increase highway design to make it safe for micromobility users. The Ped and Bike Safety Committee, the BPAC, that I'm the president of, is a conglomerate of local leaders, business owners, residents, and we come together monthly to talk about efforts to make the highways safer for our peds and bikes. And we're increasingly talking about our micromobility users. We get highway safety grants from the Maryland Highway Safety Office. We're able to use that money to target enforcement to these micromobility devices. And through that enforcement, we're doing that education that I've been talking about. We've got an emphasis on unsafe driving habits through our patrol division and through the highway safety grants. We, again, focus on the big three: riding the wrong way, going through those lights, and riding where prohibited. We can enforce that because those are pre-established laws. And then through that enforcement, we double down on that education. The ETICS safety message. So ETICS is our electronic ticketing program. When we print a warning, and we issue thousands of warnings a year, on the side of that warning, we have a safety message for peds, bikes, and motorists. And we're able to change that message. Right now, we're working on tailoring that message to our micromobility users. VMS boards. VMS stands for Variable Message System. Those are the boards you see on the side of the highway. I'll show you a picture here shortly. We're putting up a safety message, which is being implemented, I believe, this week for our scooters to stop at the lights and ride in the correct direction. Lights on Bikes program. Our BPAC solicits donations, and we get those donations. We buy bicycle lights, and we put those lights onto scooters and bikes at night so that we can illuminate them for safety. And it is the law to have a light on your scooter or bike at night. We've got a registration program locally through the department where you can register your bike or scooter. The purpose here is if it gets lost or stolen, we can track it. And if we find it, then we can get it back to you. We do social media campaigns like I'm sure lots of other jurisdictions do. And finally, one of the things we're most proud of recently is our Micromobility Safety Hub. And I'll get to that here shortly. Next slide. All right, so I talked about those VMS or Variable Message System board. Here on the left is an example of that. This was a school bus detail we did. Enforcement underway. It would scroll to the next message and it would say, stop for school buses. The ones we're doing now this summer are the big three again: ride the correct direction, stop at lights, and don't ride on the sidewalk where prohibited, because that's where we're seeing the most crashes are because of those things. So we're going to have these VMS boards out. On the right side of your screen is our Lights on Bikes program. Through the BPAC, we get those donations. We buy these lights. Pictured is the OC Smiley LED light. That's our town slogan, the OC Smiley. And those things light up. Those have a clip. We can clip them to your backpack if you're on a scooter. We can clip them to your belt line. We can clip them somewhere on the scooter or the bike. We also have a brand of bike lights with the LED white and the LED red that you can turn on and off at night, so you're illuminated at night. And next slide. Our Micromobility Safety Hub. So this is brand new, coming out of Ocean City, Maryland, safe.oceancitymd.gov. You can go there now. It is live. Our Micromobility Safety Hub is for bikes, scooters, and peds. Everyone shares the road. Here you can find guides, registration info, and safety resources all in one place. So on the left is a screenshot of the Safety Hub. If you look at the top right, it's got the Google Select Language. You click that and you can translate this into all sorts of languages. And why that's important is because remember that J1 visa program, we've got these foreign student workers. They can go here, they can select their language, and they can read this all in their language. The right side is a screenshot of the Micromobility Safety Hub options. We got that vehicle guide here. You click that guide, it takes you to that chart I showed you, but it's in a nice user-friendly format. You can search, I'm on a skateboard, for example, and it'll tell you what you can and can't do, what it's defined as. We've got the Walk Smart program. We've got the Bike Smart program on there, and we've got, let's see, the BPAC is represented, and the bike and scooter registration program. You can register your scooter or bike by clicking that link. We've got scooter safety. We're working on some scooter safety videos, and we're working on some bike safety videos, and some other links. So this is a work in progress, but our Safety Hub is our #1 spot to take people to learn about how to be a safe micromobility rider. Next slide. So in summary, Ocean City, Maryland's got a unique environment, a tourist destination with these J1 student workers. The 4 E's are how we kind of combat the issues we're seeing to increase highway safety and decrease crashes, because that's our goal. The law does lag, and oftentimes technology outpaces the law. So that's something we have to work through. There's many benefits to micromobility use in Ocean City for leisure, for bike patrol, for our workers, and for commuting. And those benefits come with some conflicts and challenges that we discussed. Ocean City's local efforts are aimed at combating those challenges to make our highways safer. And we hope we're a model maybe for some other agencies and other jurisdictions across the country, and dare I say world, because there are quite a few of you who are not in the United States in this chat. So next slide. So where to next? Here a picture, some folks wondering, where are we going? Let's work together to reduce crashes. As law enforcement professionals, we have to respond to these crashes. We'd rather not. We want to increase highway safety for our vulnerable road users, and we want to collaborate on educational approaches to enhance safety and keep the conversation going. MDOT in motion, micromobility, the new vehicles on the block. We are keeping that conversation going today, and I appreciate talking to you all from Ocean City, Maryland. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Sergeant. Stuck the landing there, and now I want to head out to Ocean City and go on a bike ride after hearing all that. So thank you so much. Let's go ahead and move to the Q&A, and thank you very much for posing questions. And I know some of them have been answered by panelists in the interim. And actually, yeah, why don't we all, the panelists all, there you go, we're all on camera. Terrific. So I'm just going to go through these by the order in which they came in, because I think we're going to have time if we move quickly to answer most of them at least. If not, there's a chance to follow up and get your question answered by the experts on the line. So first of all, a question about one-wheel riders without helmets on sidewalks and bike lanes. Are there any regulations in Maryland regarding the use of one wheels on sidewalks and roadways?
I believe one wheels are categorized as play vehicles. I am not a lawyer, so if I was to cite the state code, I might give you incorrect information. It should be on our regulations overview. Generally, helmets are required for anyone 16 under. So the helmet is more clear, but the one wheel are not allowed on roadways for sure. They're not allowed in bike facilities. It might depend on the jurisdiction as far as riding on the sidewalk.
Okay. Thanks, Meg. The next one is kind of a big question. So in 2025, we saw the drop in injuries and fatalities on our roadways, which is, of course, terrific news. And the question is about, is there a causal relationship between certain factors and that drop in fatalities and injuries? So I wonder if anyone can comment on that.
Yeah, I think nationwide, we've seen this drop in injuries and crashes. And one reason for that is simply because we're having more traffic on the road. There was a large drop in vehicle miles traveled during COVID. And as a result, we saw really high speeds. So even though there were fewer vehicle miles traveled, there were still a high number of more severe crashes. as people have returned to the roadways and people are forced to drive slower because of traffic, that naturally reduces the number of crashes. Simply because when you're moving slower, you can take in more of your surroundings. You can, process what's going on around you at a more appropriate rate. And so crashes go down. However, in Maryland, with our more precipitous drop, I think we would like to credit our data-driven approach. We had our vulnerable roadway user assessment and our pedestrian safety action plan really hit their stride starting in 2023 and are now getting to phases of construction, but we are doing a lot more to reduce speeds and crashes through infrastructure changes. So I think we would like to credit some of our data-driven approaches where we're really looking at places with high crashes.
Right. And we're certainly going to continue those in the hopes of bending the curve down further towards
Exactly.
zero, which is where we're aiming to get. Next question is about the consistency of municipal regulations. Is there consistency or is there a lot of variation?
In Maryland, there's some variation in terms of micromobility. There are some places which strictly prohibit riding on the sidewalks. Sergeant Cutts has that great guide for Ocean City because they have restrictions on their boardwalk. So there can be really specific restrictions to a location. But one thing that MDOT has in our work plan, especially for shared devices, is having consistent regulations for shared devices and some model legislation for personally owned vehicles as well.
Okay.
I
And
recommend.
someone asked about being able to determine whether or not there's a battery size issue in terms of vehicle qualifying as an e-bike or not.
The 750 watts. I'd be interested in what everyone else has to say with this. Generally, you're not going to end up with your vehicle being inspected unless you are misbehaving. You can be driving a sports car, but be driving the speed limit. You could be driving a very powerful vehicle, but behaving responsibly. But we know if you have the ability to go faster, people are more likely to do so. At the same time, you're more likely to take advantage of that. So, we don't want to stop everybody who has a vehicle that looks like it could go fast. So it's really tricky. Allison came off mute. I wonder what you have.
Well, yeah, so since 2017, I think it was, manufacturers are mandated, they must
Sticker.
have a stick. Well, it's not a sticker, it's actually a non-movable part of the bike that identifies that if it's a class 1, class 2, class 3. And Meg, I think that's where your class little emblems there were images of the sticker or the part of the bike that displays the class of the bike. Now, that being said, Meg, you talked a little bit about this, is that the bikes can be tampered with and the governor's removed so that they can go faster. But at that point of purchase, if you're interested in terms of buying a class 1, class 2, or class 3, the frame does have indication of which class it is in at the point of purchase.
And actually, someone asked if something else. Oh, has Maryland considered speed limiters on devices? Yes, so that's what we're saying. Those already exist, right? And can a kid remove the limiter? Smart ones can, right? They could potentially
Right.
watch a YouTube video, find it on the internet, figure out how to. But the point is, then it becomes an illegal device. And generally, things being sold online can be of
Right.
different quality and might be easier to hack as opposed to a vehicle sold at a bike shop, which we know generally has gone through more rigorous
It's going to have a a UL certified battery, and it's just safer to buy an e-bike from a retailer. Also, your e-bike is going to need maintenance at some point, and you want to make sure that a mechanic at a shop can work on it. If you buy something offline, have it shipped to you, it's high probability that you won't be able to have it maintained at a reputable shop.
All right, so continuing on here, somebody else asked about movement towards requiring registration of vehicles sold as mini motors and not e-bikes.
So that would require legislative change here in Maryland, and part of our advisory group is looking into model legislation. But currently, those vehicles, they can be ridden on almost any public right of way. So there would not be necessarily a need to register them. But that will definitely be part of our policy review over the coming year.
All right. Wow, there are a lot of questions here.
There really are.
Yeah.
There was a question about dedicated lanes in Ocean City.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Sergeant Cutts, I know you were involved in some recent discussions about it.
Yes, the pedestrian safety action plan is currently in place, and is a effort by MDOT, working with the town to look at improvements in our corridor, roughly 15th to 67th Street, where we see the most activity. That is currently I think it's in the design phase, and they're soliciting feedback on how to improve that corridor currently.
Oh, here's a practical question for you, Meg. Where should a bicyclist be when about to turn left?
Aha, when about to turn left. Allison could answer this as well. In our last webinar, we talked a little bit about some tips. And when turning left, sometimes I find it really hard to get all the way over to the left if I'm riding on the right. And so I'll do a U-turn, a box turn, or an L turn. So you actually continue to stay to the right, and you enter the crosswalk at the intersection, and then reposition yourself on the right-hand lane of the road where you're trying to go. I feel like it's often the safest, rather than trying to cut across all the lanes of traffic if you cannot safely merge to the left.
All right. And I see another question in here about our statewide helmet law for minors, and asking about the origin of that and support for that. I don't know if anyone can comment on that.
I can comment. I mean, from the league's perspective, we think statewide mandatory helmet laws for minors are a good thing. Statewide mandatory helmet laws for adults, I think that is left up to the state or local municipalities. It can be oftentimes seen as prohibitive for adult riders, but we know that bicycle helmets are a very good thing, and we recommend helmet use whenever on a bike. So does that answer the question? I don't know. Helmets are great. Wear a helmet. It can save your life.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know the history of it, but generally, your brain is still in development as a youth, and so we really want to protect their heads.
Right. Obviously,
Protect all of our heads. They're
some
still
of the
growing.
some of the most vulnerable road users.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
as a parent, if you have kids, a parent should be wearing their helmet and modeling good helmet use too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Running out of time.
We are running out of time. There are still some unanswered questions here, and we are happy to follow up. The email address to send them to is pretty simple. All lowercase, complete streets at mdot.maryland.gov. And again, that's complete streets at mdot.maryland.gov. And we'd be happy to field those questions, and to ask our experts to help to field those questions. And some other housekeeping as we near the end of our time together right now. The webinar's recording will be made available on the MDOT webpage. Just look for our bike ped page specifically. And please join our listserv if you want to stay in touch. We would love that. And also fill out the survey if you have feedback or want to request a new topic for future webinars. And I wish I ever could give you all a round of applause because our experts have been phenomenal, and this whole webinar has been great. And I hope everyone benefited from it as much as I have in terms of information and knowledge shared. And thanks so much. And with that, unless any of the panelists have anything to say other than thank you.
Thanks,
Just
Daniel.
remind everyone
Thank you.
to email us at Complete Streets for those unanswered questions, or if you would like a copy of the slides, we'll be posting the recording, but not the slides. And you can subscribe to both our newsletter or the League of American Bicyclists newsletter if you fill out that survey and tell us you want to be subscribed.
Great. Thanks so much, Meg.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Take care.